Hey folks, so we're here today with Dave Fisher. Is it Dave or David?
Well, it's David, but usually most people call me Dave.
Dave.
Either one, yeah.
Cool. So we're at Spoonfest 2019 and Dave has come over to say hi, which is great. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to have a look at some of Dave's work. So, are you a bowl carver? What? Sloider?
Yeah, I'm a sloider, bowl carver, spoon carver, letterer, just whatever. I'm
So
a maker,
would you
I guess, yeah.
do you associate with that Swedish tradition? Like, is that from where you're from? Is that your history? Is that the area where you live? Is that a sloider thing?
No. There's, I don't know anybody around me. There's no tradition of. I mean, there's some people that carve and things like that, but in terms of my beginnings in carving bowls and spoons and things like that, I was exposed to that through books and
Yeah, totally.
yeah, and of course there's a little bit of a Swedish connection because one of the major books was Willy Sundquist's Swedish carving techniques, and of course work of his son Yoga and all sorts of other books.
But do you have you don't have kind of Scandinavian
I don't have
treen,
family,
but
no.
there's lots of museums in America that'll have
Yeah.
like Scandinavian treen, but
Yeah.
that's not where you're from.
No.
You're
no.
Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, there's no in Minnesota, and there's some other areas
Yes.
that's more of a Scandinavian.
So people like
tradition.
Fred Livesay, Jared Dahl,
They live
they're
in that area,
hooked
right.
into that, yeah.
And growing up until recently, I wasn't really even that aware that culture was that intensely, in that part of the United States was so closely related to Scandinavia
Right.
tradition.
Yeah.
I knew there were the Minnesota Vikings, the football team, and there was a connection there. But yeah, it's I've learned that through this. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So I guess I would say I've known you really for your kind of bowl carving, and then I suppose on top of that your letter carving.
Yeah.
And you do this kind of traditional shape. It's quite refined. What would are these dough bowls? What word would you use to describe your style of bowls?
I just call them carved bowls because I do many different styles, but in general, what I typically do is you can call it an upside down orientation, I guess. So
Yeah.
Unlike your typical dough bowl, like even in rural America and so on, you would have the dough bowls made out of just the split surface on top, and then the rounded surface refined a little bit, and you would have a deep large dough bowl for mixing for bread and so on. But they tended to be very geometrically laid out with just rounded ends, straight lines in between, and just very utilitarian. And these are still useful. I guess everything I make is useful. It can be used, but I also think just because something is useful doesn't mean it can't be beautiful as well, and doesn't mean it can't have some decorative elements and some interesting lines. And so I like the way the rim sweeps down when you have the orientation of the rounded side of the bowl up. And so it can sweep down more dramatically, like in this one. If there's a stronger arc on top, you'll get a heavier sweep.
So that's very much like the ale bowls. I know a lot of bowls are made from bent branches, but it very naturally sweeps into handles. So all of these you would describe as a handle, but obviously this is a lot more refined. And then sometimes you maybe would have like a bird's head or the dragon's heads, or horses' heads.
Yeah, basically you can take anything I make really, and these two, all three of these bowls, all four, are
the same
really
shape.
the same. It's just tweaking different parts of the design, heavier curves or the proportions of length to width, here's an extreme where they're almost equal.
Yes,
and then you can tweak things on the sides where it has sort of a panel on the side that comes down to the rounded bottom, and flutes and chip carving, and but still, regardless of the form, I make sure there's a surface on the inside that is still a usable bowl. I try to make sure it's a good surface that's cleanable and without little bits of things getting stuck in it or paint flaking off or whatever. Yeah,
totally. So yeah, I think that really sums up your style of bowl quite nicely. I think the handles, one of the things that's really nice is that they almost feel like they're kind of be stretched or hammered or rolled over, so it's almost like it's not made of wood. It's like a different material that could be more malleable. And then it does, like you say, provide a really beautiful opportunity to put some decoration on, and that decoration really highlights, a bit like you were saying with your letter carving the other day, going from thin to thick, which is a really fun thing to play with.
I think it creates, when you go thin to thick and you have things tapering, it creates a sense of movement. It draws your eye along a piece, I think. And I don't know, I've never taken any courses in art and art theory and so on, so I don't know all the terminology, but it just makes sense to me when I see a piece, or even the pattern of on leaves, with the different veins on the leaves. Your eye tends to want to follow that flow, and so I try to pay attention to the lines of the piece.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so then, and we have got a couple of bird bowls here, right? So that's a really nice shape.
And this one's not my typical bird bowl. I'll start with a crook, for example. This is a very small example, but the surface of the branch, the top surface, the bend in the branch would be like this, which allows these thin elements here. So the head can kind of rise up, but then the tail can rise up with very thin grain, because the grain's going, or very thin section, because the grain's following right up through the tail. Here, this is made from actually a straight bit of wood, but it's basically split in half and then split again. So you have a quarter section of about a 5-inch branch, and then a 1/4-inch section of it, and then the two split sides are actually up. So you have
the other way up to these ones,
and then it's designed from there, and so you can use the straight grain, but you compromise the tail, doesn't come up at this angle, things like that.
That's really good. It'd be nice to get a bit of a close up on this one. I think is this milk paint? I mean, it's some kind of white paint.
That's actually artist oil.
Right.
So it's a titanium oxide, paint, titanium white.
It's really nice how it accentuates the facets. So if you have a look at that, where I don't know whether you've rubbed that back or whether it's just from people holding it, but you can see the facets really clearly from that paint.
It's just when the paint's wet, I'll just wipe it back with a rag a little bit. So not sandpaper. That way the facets are still sharp.
Take some of it off, right?
But it's just rubbed back while the paint's still, and the paint is thinned down, so it's more of a wash. I'll put just extra oil in the artist oil paint. Artist oil paint's just linseed oil and pigment, and so a little more oil will just make the pigment thin.
You can really see the grain through it, which is really nice. But there's a lot of attention to detail there with the different textures. So you've got the kind of pattern down the belly, and then up towards the beak, these little facets. Really nice details coming around here.
And with small pieces like this, it's it's spoon carving techniques, really. I mean, it's a hook knife on the inside, it's a hook knife under here. Even this slight pattern on the wings is just with a hook knife coming down through. And so, pretty simple to use your spoon carving tools.
It's just really nice, these little cuts coming around the back that help accentuate that curve. So it makes that kind of look tighter, doesn't it, by these kind of becoming more shallow out towards the...
Yeah, because relative to those wider sweeps, it's sort of gradually getting tighter. I don't know if I even realized that until you said that, but that's good, Brian. Yeah.
It's nice, and then, there's, I suppose, a bit of a keel there for strength, because that could be a weak point. That's the main difference, isn't it? With these two, this one has got the strength there,
right,
whereas that, I suppose, could be quite weak.
Yeah, and there's, it's not, these little wings here, if somebody handled it very roughly, I suppose could break, but
they really shouldn't.
Yeah, they shouldn't handle it.
You've
roughly.
got to be nice to spoons and bowls. Cool. All right. So, and then it'd be nice to actually have a little look at your signature. And that's one of the things that I think is really special about bowls that I wish you could do with spoons, because spoons you have to see all of the surfaces, whereas a bowl sits, so you can have a really beautiful bowl without having to have any signatures anywhere on it, and then underneath you can have that extra information or something hidden.
It's almost like you have a little canvas underneath, and I like when you say hidden, because you can also I've done things like sometimes little pictures just carved with the V, a tree or little inscription or something like that. It can even be a little bit of a favorite line of the person's poetry or something, and it's just underneath. So it doesn't have to be part of the piece, and then it's a little surprise when somebody
It's a really nice thing about bowls. So, and then we can see Dave's signature there. So it's a D and then a fish for David Fisher, which is classy. I like this attention to detail here, where you see how these come around. That's really nice as well. It's a nice blood red. This is that just one colour painted on, or is
that's just thinned artist oils, thinned with more linseed oil, and so it just becomes like a stain.
Yeah.
And
translucent.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So I suppose the one of the things that I think that you've totally nailed, possibly more than anyone else I think I've ever seen in kind of wood, is the letter carving. Mm-hmm. And I suppose that kind of builds on top of the decorations and, like we're saying, the signature on the bottom of the bowl. So yeah, maybe it'd be nice for us to have a little look at some of the lettering that you've done. So this is obviously this is a spoon for Stephen. I'm guessing.
Yes.
It's got so who's Stephen then?
Stephen is a fellow who is going to be here at Spoonfest and wanted me to bring him an eating bowl and spoon. So
nice.
I put
personalized
Stephen's
spoon.
Name.
Yeah.
That's right.
I've got a feeling it might be spelt with a V.
It's not.
Whew, phew.
You don't think I checked that, Brian? Yeah.
I'm just trying to wind you up.
Okay.
So come and have a look at this. Doesn't that look beautiful? It's obviously nice that we've got the kind of chip carving, which really fills the space of the handle sweetly. And kind of funky H&E. But we should really ask Dave, the expert's opinion. So how have you come up with that? What did you, obviously you've made the spoon first thinking I'll leave a space for the letters, but really you're just trying to make a pretty handle first, right?
Yeah, the hand, I wasn't thinking, I didn't design the letters before I designed the canvas of the handle. The handle I just left the way it was. Then what I'll tend to do in a sketchbook or something, I'll actually lay it down on the sketchbook, kind of trace the handle, and know the shape that I have to work with, and then I can do that maybe 3 or 4 times in the sketchbook, and then I can just play around with how I want the letters to fill the space, and I don't worry about uppercase, lowercase. I don't have a font I use. I just I've as I've explored and played around, just like all I'm doing is playing around with bowl design and playing around with lettering design. I realized you can really manipulate the letters quite a bit. And actually, a lot of that inspiration came from some of the British letter carvers that I've seen. There's a guy named Martin Wenham, who's in Wales, I think, and he does just brilliant letter carving in wood. and there's some incredible letter carvers in stone in Britain, and so the way that they are able to play with the letter designs and have it just, even if you didn't know the language, even if somebody was looking at it that couldn't read what it said, it would still be a beautiful pattern of light and shadow is what you're capturing. It's just, you know, I often can see, you know, Arabic calligraphy or, you know, Japanese, Chinese calligraphy, and it's just stunningly beautiful, even if I don't know what it says.
Yeah, because you can look at it and literally not have a clue.
Right.
But it's like, that is a pretty
but
pattern.
I love it. Yeah. And so I try to, you know, have the pattern of the letters. It goes just beyond what it's saying, and you can make beautiful flowing forms with letters. I just see the letters as shapes. Just,
So I think that that, from my point of view, even is just a really basic tip. Make your handle, draw around it, and then just look at this pretty little chip carving that he's filled in the space. So presumably did you carve the name first and then you thought about the chip carving afterwards, or was that part of your drawing?
I think I filled in, I think in the drawing I just knew I'd fill it in with some sort of chips. But sometimes that just comes after. I might have carved the name and then realized, well, I think it could use
space.
Knowing when to stop. I don't always fill every space, depends on what the inscription is, because blank space can also make quite a statement. You know?
Yeah.
So you got to resist the temptation to just try to
lost
fill
every
up
millimeter. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think we are going to do, you're going to give a few top tips on letter carving, but it's worth just pointing out that Dave has got a fantastic blog that you've been writing for a fair amount of time.
Yeah, about five years.
Yeah.
Or so.
So, and Dave, as you probably noticed, is a very eloquent, educated man. So his blog is worth checking out. There'll be a lot of really good stuff. So how do they find your blog?
My blog is through WordPress, so I think you could do a little search and find it pretty easily. But
David
I think
Fisher Bowles.
David Fisher Bowles, and it'll start to come up. But it's I think David F. Fisher blog.
What does the F stand for?
That's my middle initial.
Oh, for
fantastic.
You've said that before, haven't you? Amazing.
I knew that was coming. Yeah, it's Frederick.
Great.
So,
basically, don't stress about it. We'll put a link with the video. So,
okay. Yeah.
Great. Well, I know you guys are going to really appreciate having seen this stuff. Make sure you go and check out Dave's blog. And thanks for having a little chat with us. It's been really good.
Thanks, Brian. My pleasure.